Yeah. Hello,
Good
Mr.
morning.
New York
Hey
City.
Tom,
How are you guys?
we're
So
very
you're not,
pleased to see. We're very pleased to see you.
you already lied to me. You kind of are from the future because it's 5 a.m. where you're at, and it's only 4 a.m. here.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my
Fucking
God. This
getting
is
your DeLorean.
hour 20 for you guys?
Uh, not either 19 or 20. I can't do the fucking math at the
Yeah, it's
moment.
start of hour number 20, I guess. Or
This is
something like that.
amazing. I'm so amazed.
Yeah, here we are.
Well, what are we up to? How are we doing? I mean, I feel really grateful for the people that have donated during the 2 hours of filler. So, thank you very much, everyone. If you do feel like really sympathizing with us for how difficult we're finding this in our first attempt, please do give some sympathy dollars. I can't really say like the usual end of hour pitch I've been doing. These great speakers have given up all their time to share this amazing value. It's like Garrett and I are dying in our chairs here. Please give some money to the charity, but the charity's still good. We might not be as good as we were in hour number 2, but the charity's still good. So, and we have a proper guest now for you. So instead of us two,
Just rambling on about nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, amazing. I mean, I'm super impressed with you guys. Thank you guys so much for doing this. It's really nice.
Yeah.
How did you guys decide on like the mission and who to do the charity for?
So,
Pick
a couple
the
months
mission.
ago, we do a weekly video cast every Thursday. It's called the SEO Unmasked podcast or video cast or whatever. And I think in like November, I'm like, yeah, we should do something. It's been a good year for everyone that's involved. Like, let's do something for charity. And the original thought was 24 hours of SEO where I'm going to stay up and I'm going to start a site from scratch. And we're just going to have tons of people watching and I'm going to do SEO on it and shit. And fucking Ben can come on and start writing content. And Steve and I are going to be doing outreach and like whatever. And we'll do that for charity. But then we realized that's probably not a good way to do it. And then we decided, what if we had like a person on every hour talking about what they're really good at or something? And so then it was that. And then I think we just were like, so what charity should we do it for? And Steve was just like, St. Jude's. Yep, that's always a good one. And,
Yeah, I mean, I always try and raise for the cancer charities where children are involved. So I'm doing a live event with a few other business owners in my town later in the year, probably around November, for the Teenage Cancer Trust over here in the UK.
It's amazing. You guys are good people.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Let's not get out of hand here.
Cool.
I don't know. We've just had a really good couple of years, and we've always said, when we had the time, we would give it up and do some stuff. So we had to be true to our word after. So we just thought this is the year to start trying to give back a bit more.
Awesome.
so tell us about you.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you could see my screen. I just shared it.
I see slide number 2. What is going on?
Yeah, it's getting a little out of hand there.
Chris Dyson just told me I need to have a drink, so I'm going to get some more wine poured. If this goes wrong, Chris, you're getting the blame.
Yeah, my name is Tom Casano. I live in New York. I've been doing SEO some time. I have a SEO agency of a remote team, and just my company's been growing with consulting and clients, and happy to talk about link earning today. Very white hat, somewhat aspirational in terms of I want things to be actionable, but maybe I should just dive into it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Cool. And let me know if for whatever reason you can't see the screen. But
I think we're good.
This is the who is this guy, which I just told you. So there you have my pictures. And I think you know what you need to know. My company is called SureOak.com, like an oak tree. And we're talking about link earning today. And so a logical place to start is why backlinks matter. I think just about every SEO knows. But in my experience, referring domains are the most heavily weighted ranking factor in Google's algorithm. And I've just seen this time and again where a website can have amazing content, be very well optimized in 1,000 ways on site. And then the moment it starts getting some real links to it, some real authoritative links, that's when it really starts driving ranking. The reason Google is using links as an indicator in their algorithm to decide on which sites to rank is because links on the web are like social proof. If you have other websites linking back to you that you can't control, you can't twist their arm, they just decided to because they wanted to or because, whatever the circumstances might be. For Google, it's like a form of social proof. You can't manipulate it. Well, you could try, but, with algorithm updates, Google's constantly fighting any manipulation. And yeah, it just indicates that your website, your page is resourceful, it's useful, it's trustworthy, and it's worth linking to. And of course, backlinks, today, again, are still super important, even though I think it seems kind of ridiculous. A lot of people realize it doesn't really matter. You might have the greatest, most helpful piece of content with no links to it, but Google won't really rank it so well, though there are, of course, always edge cases and, non-competitive keywords and reasons why it can rank. But it might not be the case forever. So nowadays we're seeing an increase in user experience as a ranking factor. Google's extremely smart, so I like to just mention things like LSI and RankBrain and machine learning, which get really complex, and I don't try to understand those things so well. I just know that Google kind of knows what they're doing, and they can figure things out. So links still matter very, very much today, but might not matter forever. But we have to do what works, right? If Google says, you need high domain authority sites linking back to yours, you got to do it. And then I'm always thinking long term. I'm always thinking, how are we going to get links that's not just going to help our site today, tomorrow, but for the course of this year and the years to come? Because it really, really stinks, as anyone knows, if you've ever acquired organic traffic and then you've just seen it fall away due to an algo update. So nobody wants that. Really quickly, what do we want when we're getting a backlink? And again, I'm going to be talking about backlinks a lot today. Referring domains versus backlinks, because 10 backlinks from the same website is not nearly as powerful as 10 backlinks from 10 separate websites. So these are the attributes we want. Obviously, the number, right? We'd rather have 100 than 10 referring domains or websites linking back to our site. The domain authority, the trust flow, and the relevance. And I'd be interested to hear if other people have other things they'd add to this list, but I think that these are the primary core ones. So I think it's important we talk about the distinction between link building and link earning. Very straightforward. Link building is when you create the link. So if you can go on to another website, or if you own another website, if you are able to publish directly to another website, you could sit there and create the link however you want, create the anchor text and have it linked back to any page you want. If you're earning links, someone else is creating that link for you. So it's much more natural in a sense. You didn't control it, and it is more earned and more of what Google's actually looking for. And so to try to draw more of a distinction, link building becomes unnatural. And I think a good example is guest posting, which I have nothing personally against guest posting. I've done guest posting for a very long time, but it's clearly not very natural. You can create the anchor text. You can create where you're putting it in the guest post, assuming that the owner of that website will allow you to, or maybe you have to put it in the bio. You can control which page on whatever website on the web you can link it to. Link building, when we're doing it actively, is not scalable. Because again, if we're doing 10 guest posts a month, we have to manually go or have writers or have people we need to help us to create all these guest posts, or whatever form of us actively creating these links itself. It's also something that Google is kind of working against. I saw in a Rand Fishkin presentation on YouTube, I think it's from a year or two ago. He was talking about how Google is basically, they want to see links that are earned, and they don't want to see links that are built. Because again, from Google's standpoint, for social proof, for the usefulness of why they're using links in their algorithm in the first place, it is because they can see that, okay, there's more, more other websites, other webmasters and bloggers and journalists saying, like, this is a helpful, good page, go check it out. I found it to be less effective. about a year ago, I was doing guest posting as a service. We were doing about 10 guest posts a month. And I was having a really hard time with having it drive impact, especially when we were creating guest posts and having those links go directly to the page that we wanted to. That was a challenge. The purpose of many algo updates, as I mentioned, and yeah, I talked about guest posting. So link earning, it's more natural. We're not controlling it, which can be a challenge because then we can't, if we want certain anchor text, we want to get a backlink to a certain page on our site, we can't directly do that. It is more scalable because you don't have to sit there and go manually create these 10 links. Outreach might not be required. Outreach usually is required, but there are examples we're going to go through today that we'll see, links being earned, not because, we're sending cold emails out and, getting a very low response rate and some people are finally linking back. It's because people somehow came upon it, liked it for whatever reason, wanted to share it. It is more aligned with what Google's looking for and the purpose for them having it in their algorithm. I find it to be more powerful and more future-proof in a sense. So the problem we're focusing on today is how do we increase a site's domain authority from, let's say, under 40 to over 70? Because I found that, with let's call it a brand new website with a domain authority of 1, we can get it to about 30, 35, let's say, by sheer link building. Maybe even 40, maybe even above. I'm sure we all have different experiences in what we can attain. But when you look at sites that have a domain authority of 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus, are they really sitting there doing link building? And the answer is basically no. So, a great case in point, and this is obviously a very extreme example, right? But let's take a look at BuzzFeed. How are they doing link building? And the answer is with, huge companies, huge brands, they're not doing any link building, right? They are creating amazing content, and then they already have an audience or a channel or a way that they're able to get it in front of people that can then link back to it. And, most of us probably don't have that, or some companies might, especially if a website already has good organic traffic, it can create a feedback loop because people can already find it and then they can link back to it. So if you put a new amazing resource on your website today and it already has at least 10,000 organic visitors per month or 50,000, or you have a huge mailing list or whatnot, you can get it in front of people. So if it's a website or a business with little to no audience or traffic, you're going to hear a lot of crickets. And that's build it and they will come, and it just does not work. So you really need that catalyst, which could be outreach, could be PR and that sort of thing. A second problem is that link building is really hard. A lot of SEOs won't even do it because the on-site stuff is, frankly, there's a lot of complexity, of course, especially from in-depth technical audits and keyword research and creating amazing content, thinking strategically and great user experience. I mean, all these things, I'm not saying they're easy, but link building itself is so hard that a lot of SEOs kind of will not really want to do it. And I've had that feeling 1,000 times because it is hard. And you could send out 100 emails and get 0 backlinks. I was speaking with Cyrus Shepard from Moz, I think a month or two ago, and he said he doesn't really do link building. Dan Shore from Evolve SEO, same thing. Like, they're not really doing link building. And the truth is, earning backlinks is even harder. It can be extremely painful, and it could be, a lot of failures along the way. So let's look at some places where it makes sense to start. So this is like a pretty standard process we can use where we begin by looking at what's working for competitors, right? People are usually pretty familiar with competitor analysis. We can see where they're getting backlinks from. We can see which pages on their site are acquiring the most referring domains, which we're going to talk about a little more in depth. And we can get a sense of what's working, especially within the industry that if it's for our own business or for a client's business, every industry has its own unique peculiarities in terms of what works well for acquiring links. I was doing a project a couple months ago. It was for this business that does steel metal buildings, which is like a really bizarre, very tiny little niche. And it turned out that 50% of the pages in the industry that were getting backlinks were images. And I was like, that is so bizarre. Like, why is everyone linking to images? And it turned out that those images within this niche were basically blueprints of these steel metal buildings. They were comparison charts and guides and like, images of, it could be packages and plans or that kind of thing. And then it was also just pictures of these metal buildings themselves. So I thought that was really fascinating and going to help really to inform the kinds of content or link-worthy assets we want to create on the site to then acquire those links. Of course, we're going to go on and execute it and create our own link-worthy asset or content. Again, do outreach or do something to get it some of that traction. And then we're going to see how it goes, right? And we're going to see failures. We're going to see some things that where it kind of makes sense. We're going to learn. We're going to iterate and improve. And I think this is a fairly standard process of iteration you see among other areas, not even in just SEO. So, yeah, we want to find a good way. We want to understand what are the first principles, so what works, why it works, how we apply it. So the first principle is we want to create a link-worthy asset. So link earning is not like, writing the 400-word blog post and then like thinking, oh yeah, like people will just link to this. And I think probably a lot of people who do SEO or have done it have some kind of experience like this. I know I did some years back when I created a website, one of many websites, and then it just sat there. And I built it and expected the traffic and people to come, nothing happened because no one knew about it. There was no audience and no one to even find it, right? It probably wasn't even on the 5th page of Google. We're not talking about, just an infographic or, any kind of just, we're going to spend like an hour or a few hours create something, right? We're talking a lot more intensive. And the reason is because if you think of the last time you either wrote a blog post or shared something on social media, and you think of who you linked to and why, and of course, social media links we're not talking about here, but we're just talking about the idea of why we're linking to things. We're usually doing it for a pretty strong reason. I find the reason I link to people is because it's backing up a claim I'm making. So it could be a statistic or it's a resource where it's like, if you want to learn more about this thing I tried to put in 2 sentences, here's a link you can go learn more on your own. So it's pointing the user to a page or a website or an authority or something really cool. There's 1,000 reasons to link. But realistically, if you think of why people are linking in the first place, if we put ourselves in their shoes, we can then try to reverse engineer, okay, what are we going to create or what are we going to do that people will be incentivized to link? And anyone who has, asked for links, you know how painful it is because no one cares. No one cares about, what we want to get out of it. It's about giving. It's about what value can we add and we provide versus me asking you, right? And if anyone ever just asks you for something without really, unless it's like your spouse or sibling or friend, it's kind of like some random person you never heard of sends you a cold email like, hey, do you want to link to my thing? Do you really want to take the effort, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, to go into your website, create a link and talk about it? Most people don't. So link-worthy assets are basically about creating high value that's so valuable that people actually want to share. And that's the way it's supposed to work. It's obviously not the way it works most of the time. So it's always good to see some fun examples. So I've got 4 of them here. The first one is a tool. I've never heard of this company, Smart Asset. I was just poking around on the web. And they've got a really cool mortgage calculator. You can go check it out if you want. It has a really nice user experience. These little pie charts and things move around as you're like changing numbers. So it has like a little nice animation. But the things on the left are cool too. The credit score, just the features of it were pretty nice, pretty cool. And here's their results from this one piece of this one asset. 240 referring domains. I have no idea if they did any outreach or didn't. I suspect that they did not. Because I don't know how long it's been there, and I wasn't part of whatever happened. But it's really nice if you think about having, obviously a ton goes into creating a tool like this. So it's not like we put on our shoestring budget for $1,000 and create this amazing thing. But I think the value of who knows the domain authority of the top 10% of these referring domains, and it's again I find you can see it's a lot more scalable than we're going to be writing 240 guest posts, right? Probably it's more economical to do it this way. And it's interesting to think about in the last time you did a campaign and got over 200 referring domains to one piece of content. So here's why it worked. It's useful and it's helpful. It's actually helping people solve a pain or a problem. So people are naturally incentivized to share it because, if they want to help their friend or point someone in the direction of like, here's a great mortgage calculator to use, go check it out. Great user experience, user interface, and it's free. Second example would be a white paper or an industry report. And these 4 examples are all different on purpose so that we can see and start generating some ideas of our own of what makes sense. So this is from Social Media Examiner. I believe they do this every year. And, 500 referring domains. I think this was the one for last year. So, maybe every year they get new referring domains back to these reports. And the reason it works is because it's authoritative. They're creating research. They have data. It's thought leadership. And they're a resource. And this point I love to talk about because part of the way Page and Brin created Google and thought about it is that it's kind of like it works at a university where if you have all these studies and research papers and we're citing sources at the bottom of those academic papers, like when you're in college, you're writing an essay and you've got your citations at the bottom, that's kind of how the web is. And that's kind of how they looked to model Google, which is if everyone keeps citing the same source, the same reference keeps popping up, it must be pretty important, pretty helpful, pretty trustworthy, pretty authoritative. And so, that's what this white paper is. It's a resource. It's a citation. There might be a stat in there. There might be something that was said that, okay, I could point back to this, and this is pretty authoritative. This is a fun picture to look at. The third example, this is done by a marketing agency called Fractal based in Florida. They're amazing. I've spoken to them several times, and they've been all over the Moz blog over the last few years. But they did this campaign called The Perceptions of Perfection. You guys might have seen or heard of this. And basically they asked, I believe, designers to create what would be like, the perfect woman, right? And to Photoshop this image. And it's really fascinating from a user standpoint, right? From just being someone that finds this on Facebook or Twitter, because you see like, oh, wow, what people think is beautiful in China is not what people think is beautiful in Italy. And you see how it's relative and, here's how the campaign did. And to be fair, this is could be one of their most successful campaigns. I'm not exactly sure. They have failures, right? They might have a campaign that gets 0 to 20 links. But 850 referring domains is pretty wow, is pretty amazing. And the reason it works is because there's a really strong emotional hook. And I think as a content marketer, it's something that's easy to forget. But in this case, it's body image issues. And it hits so many women so hard because it's something they think about and care about, and there could be insecurities around. So getting that emotional kind of spark in people creates a little more, actionability that they're going to share it or they're going to talk about it, they're going to refer to it because it hits them somewhere versus something that you just have no emotional reaction to, and then it's just kind of like not even interesting. It's kind of boring. So it's unique, it's original data, it's interesting, and they pitch this to PR. So that's their outreach portion of this, which is, reaching out to journalists and that sort of thing. The fourth example, which I'd encourage you to go check out, it's just so freaking cool. And this is a static image of it, but you have to see the animation of this thing happening. It's called, it's called Out of Sight, Out of Mind. There's the URL at the bottom, drones.pitchinteractive.com. And it's really amazing, and it's also kind of upsetting. So it's basically showing all of the innocent civilians, I think in Pakistan, that were killed from drone strikes over the last however many years. And obviously a ton of work went into this. When you sit there and watch it, you're like, okay, they had, a designer, a developer, researcher. They definitely invested money into this puppy. And this has earned over 1,000 referring domains. So freaking amazing, right? If we think about, I'm going to go, again, just to go back to this example, I'm going to go write, 10 guest posts and all this stuff. Look at the ROI these guys are getting. Again, a pretty heavy investment, but I think the ROI is significantly higher because these links are eventually getting earned. And again, usually there's a component of outreach or PR or something. So why did it work? Interactive data visualization is something I think is just a really cool opportunity these days because visualizing data, and there is so much data, and a lot of it is not accessible if it's in like a database somewhere or it's just not easy to see. And if you've ever gone to these interactive data visualizations, you click around, move around, it's really cool. Rand Fishkin was saying the same thing earlier this week. It's very powerful storytelling, at least in this case, right? And this is what it's about. Innocent people getting killed by drone strikes. As an American citizen, I feel pretty terrible about that, and it's emotional and provocative. Second principle is create high value. And this is the whole basis of creating a link-worthy asset. So I think this is one of the most interesting things I find is when we go ahead and do competitor analysis. So in this example, we're going to Ahrefs or Ahrefs, however you say it. clicking on the best pages by links, and then looking at what are the pages that have acquired the most amount of referring domains. This is actually sort of by URL rating, but it's pretty similar. And so, for fun, let's look at Moz, right? Because they're, to me, in my mind, they're like the authority within the SEO space. So we see right away that the second most linked to asset on their entire site is Open Site Explorer, right? So everyone who wants to check domain authority, which is a metric I heavily rely on, they're linking to this. Why? Because it's an open and free tool. It's valuable. I could just go there right now and check any website that they've at least crawled or indexed and get some, interesting data from. The next thing on there, the beginner's guide to SEO. Okay, so some amazing content marketing, some very helpful resources. The other one I highlighted there, Follower Wonk, which is again a tool, a free tool. Obviously, they have a paid version of it, but valuable things. The Google algorithm change history, which I also do rely on when I'm trying to figure out some basic algorithm shifts, and Mozbar, again, another tool. And you're going to find very different stories depending on what site you look at. I was looking at neilpatel.com, and a lot of it was content-driven. A lot of it was guides. This is HubSpot, and I'd never seen these before, but they've got these different statistics pages, right? So getting tons of referring domains. Obviously, they're HubSpot. Obviously, a huge brand. Obviously, they have a huge budget. But the point is, we can learn from what's working for others, what kind of link-worthy assets might make sense for us to create. So the first two I highlighted here are statistics they've created. The next one is Blog Ideas Generator. Pretty cool. I think I might have been there before. I don't know, but sounds like a nifty tool or to play around with. Again, marketing statistics, and at the bottom there, certifications. So again, a link-worthy resource. The next one I did is Buffer. I don't know if you guys use Buffer, but it's a pretty cool, fun app, and I love their content marketing on their blog. I had no idea what to expect. I just, did this yesterday to see what is Buffer getting the most backlinks to? What page, what piece of content or asset? Turns out they've got these tools I've never heard of. Pablo, design engaging images for your social media posts. Pretty cool. It's getting 3,400 referring domains. The floating share bar. Never heard of that either, but okay, sounds like it's going well for them. And this is an interesting one, open salaries at Buffer. So by them being transparent, posting their salaries, I'm assuming that's what this is. I didn't actually click on that link. It's pretty interesting what's working well for them. So you could sit there in your industry and see what's working well for everyone else. And, we could model those who are successful before us. So we want to accelerate link growth. To do that, we need a catalyst to accelerate link acquisition. This is a fancy way of saying outreach or PR or having some kind of vehicle or marketing channel, right? If you already have an audience, if you already have a mailing list of 100,000 people, you can share your newest, amazing thing with them, and you might get some links from it. Brian Dean does this all the time. So maybe every couple weeks or something, he'll blast his whole list and say, oh, I created this new thing. And I don't know if that equates to X amount of links for him, but it's one way to go. So outreach is pretty much the standard traditional SEO way to go. Success rates, this is the interesting thing. Success rates are highly correlated with the link worthiness of the content. So if you guys have personally sat there yourself and done outreach, I know I have. I think a lot of people, might have that experience of doing hours and hours of emailing people. And if we look at, let's say we're going to email a cold email, let's say 100 people. If the thing that we're doing outreach for, if it sucks, if it's, a blog post, if it's just basically nothing, we might get effectively 0 backlinks for all 100 emails we sent. We might personalize those emails. We might have had a VA or done research to find the email addresses and the people on the websites. If we have the most amazing, most incredible piece of content or tool or link-worthy asset ever, we might get a significantly higher success rate. And that might come over time, right? So it might just be even, a matter of getting on their radar the first time we send that email, and then 3 months later, 6 months later, that same person, it's familiar, they've heard of it, they're like, what was that? They go back to it, and they might link back to it in the future, or they might share it on social and someone else links to it or refer someone to it. Who knows how the pathways and exactly how this happens, but it definitely affects the ability of an outreach campaign to be successful. Obviously, we want to be targeting the right people. So again, looking at a similar piece of content, and looking at who's linking to that piece of content, and then doing outreach directly to those people, and also to people who would be interested or might be interested or we've built relationships with, people who are interested in that niche. Personalization I mentioned, which is you can have an email template, and then we do want to personalize the first sentence or two. We want it to be a real kind of how you meet someone at a cocktail party, right? So if we send, and if you've ever been on the receiving end of cold emails that are just, mail merged or blasted out to an email list, you get the feeling of like, delete or spam or whatever, because it's not really addressed to you, right? It's more of it feels more like spam versus if you say to someone, oh, I love this about you, or we're both in Seattle, let's grab a coffee, whatever it is. It sounds a little cheesy, but just having relationships is so important. And then the other thing is you don't have to just think about email. You could build relationships and do outreach and promote and share any kind of link-worthy assets. It could be via Twitter. It could be in an interview. It could be with real people in real life. Quote-unquote true link earning is like no outreach required. It's hands-off. Some of this is a little more idealized, but some of it is very realistic, especially for very big brands, very big companies, or very big audiences. It's clearly the most scalable because, again, you don't have to sit there and email 1,000 people to get 5 to whatever it may be, 50 backlinks. Ideally, you'd be acquiring those backlinks naturally because people want to link to it and they're incentivized to, and what you have is awesome. And that's sort of the way that Google will position, just create awesome stuff and people are going to link back to it. And a lot of us know that's not the reality. You will hear crickets and people won't link to it. And also it could be painfully slow. Again, depending on the audience size and the traffic. So you can create the most amazing thing today, but if no one's finding it, no one's seeing it, it's not going to acquire links. And if just like a very small amount are seeing it, then it will acquire them extremely slowly. So over the course of a couple of years, maybe you start getting, the amount of links you would have gotten if you just did like pretty hardcore outreach in month 1. And then the other interesting thing is, again, having this catalyst or this vehicle. So outreach is like the primary one we normally think of, and PR kind of fits along those lines where it's pitching journalists, let's say. But, if there's referrals, right? So if people are like, oh, yeah, check out this cool free tool. Oh, you're trying to do this? Okay, like check out this piece of content. Getting people referred to something, obviously, who doesn't want to go viral? But that, again, is fairly unpredictable and like a lot of chance in there, and something I'm certainly no expert in. Having brand awareness, having an audience, having traffic, social media. There's all kinds of ways that we could basically get it in front of people. And of course, we want to get it in front of the people most likely to link back to it. Factors that increase a piece of or an asset's link earning potential is really, again, comes back to value. It comes back to, is what we're creating actually awesome and amazing and really cool and really helpful and really, there's nothing else like it on the web, creates this competitive advantage. Is it authoritative? If it's free, it's definitely, I've seen be a problem for one of my clients where he has an info product, which is pretty cool, but it's all, behind the paywall. It's like you have to purchase it and download the PDF or whatever he's selling. So he doesn't have all of this potentially amazing content just free on the site, which then is, okay, where do you put the line of what's given for free and then what you have to pay for? 10X is a concept from Rand Fishkin, which is kind of related to the skyscraper technique, or pillar content is maybe one version of it. Basically just making something amazing, which is easy to say, right? All of this stuff is simple but not easy. It's easy for me to talk about this, but the reality of the execution of it obviously takes a lot of time, effort, budget, and input. And then, most importantly, it's hard to replicate. It gives you a competitive advantage. And that's why tools can be so interesting. Because if you think of the tools you use for free on the web, I use a word counter, I think, to do my word counts. And there's probably 1,000 word counters out there, but the more helpful and useful a tool can be, the more it gives you a competitive advantage, especially if it's kind of like one of the only tools that does this weird thing. And it's really hard for a competitor. They would have to go through the painful motions you went through, which is like getting a developer and like a UI and making sure it works and doesn't break and all these things. It gives you that competitive advantage. As a somewhat related kind of bonus, I wanted to talk about user-generated links, because I think this area just doesn't get enough love and attention. I think it's one of the most fascinating and scalable ways to earn links to your site. So what I mean by user-generated links is, if you have users on your website or your business, they can create a profile or a portfolio about themselves. They will, a subset of them, call it 1% or 10%, maybe as high as 40%, who knows, will link back to their, whatever it is that's on your website. So their profile, their portfolio. I'm going to give you some perfect examples to explain this. Another example is if I go and create content on a website. It might be written, it might be visual, it might be a video, it might be another form of content. I might link back to it to point my readers or whoever, people on my website, back to it. It might be a social. Again, I don't really think of like social shares as link building because obviously it's not the same. They're no followed, and they're not looked at the same by Google. And I haven't found that they really add the value that actual links do. People might disagree or have different experiences, but in my opinion, if there's a page of a website gets like 1,000 shares, let's call it, I don't find that it really drives much impact. Maybe people have had experiences where they move up a couple positions just from social, but I haven't experienced that myself, but I can't say enough about it. Third thing, embedding content that includes a link, right? So if you want to embed, again, if it's a tool, if it's a piece of media, whatever, in your website, that you created over on some other website, there could be a link going back there. People are probably more familiar with badges, which is like, top rated author according to our website, and then crediting, and that's more of maybe an example with photo credit. So here are 4 examples. I threw on Facebook here as just one social media example, but basically if you looked at LinkedIn, if you look at Twitter, if you look at just about any social media, if you look at their referring domains and links coming back to them, it's like massive amounts. And if you think of your own website, whether it's your company website, your personal website, you'll often yourself put in your social media icons right there in the footer, in the header, somewhere there. So this is that example of users, if they have a profile, if they have more information about themselves they want to point people to, especially on a trusted social network, they're going to link back to it. And of course, this isn't a problem for, like, again, we're talking about Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. So these are massive, enormous, like the biggest sites, the biggest online presences, basically. So it's a little unfair, but it's a great model. And if you look at smaller businesses doing it, so I put in the top right here, Behance, because they kind of have a very similar model. It's just that I believe it's for artists, designers, people creating cool things, but they have a portfolio on there. So if you look at their backlink profile, you'll probably find something similar. And then there's other sites, let's say, for instance, in the coaching industry, you might find a coaching site. There's one called Numi, and they have, I forget how many, maybe 4,000 or 8,000 coaching profiles listed on there. And if we start auditing their referring domains, you'll find that coaches from their own website are linking back to their own profiles on there. Maybe it creates more trust, more authority, and like, here's more information about me you can find over there. I think a lot of us do that kind of thing. A really cool example is Eventbrite and other event websites, because if I go and create an event, it's going to live over on Eventbrite's website. And then if I want to point people to my event, I'm going to link over to there. So if you start auditing the backlink profile of an event site like this, you're going to find people linking to their event because, again, they created some content or some asset or some information that lives over somewhere else, and so they have to point people over that. And for a lot of businesses, a lot of websites, we're not even thinking along these lines, and we're not doing anything remotely like this. But I think it creates a really cool opportunity because, again, it's just naturally acquired, earned, user-generated backlinks. The bottom right example, Animoto, I had never heard of them 6 months ago. And I forgot why I was, but I was just looking at who's linking back to them. And so what's really interesting, on this website, you can create your own videos. And for whatever reason, when people are sharing them, it's basically linking back to that video that, again, lives over on Animoto's website. So a pretty cool way to approach this stuff. So one of the main points is that link-worthy assets are not just content. Usually that's how we think about it. Usually we think of, writing the skyscraper piece of content or writing the comprehensive guide to X or, the top 10 reasons why something. But there's other forms of media, tools like we've been talking about. And so here's a rough list of some basic link-worthy ideas. Tools we've been talking about: interactive data visualization, white papers, original research and studies is always, I I think important because you become that source for citation, where if you have a stat that comes out of that and it gets shared with someone and they want to reference the source or the citation of where that statistic came from, or who's the authority that said that this X is Y, and here's the study to prove it, you are like the originator of that data, that information. Curating content, other forms of media, user profiles and portfolios like we just talked about, and content creation tools, so making events or making videos like we just discussed. The overall formula for link earning is you do research, you find what's working, you find, you come up with some ideas what could work, you create some form of high value, hopefully some value that's gives you a competitive advantage that's really hard for your competitors to go and just copy and write their own infographic or something that it might be. And then you have some form of catalyst or outreach, or basically a vehicle, an audience that you can get it in front of your existing audience, or some other way, pitching journalists and that sort of thing. A lot of traps here. So the first obvious one is having something that's not very high value, not very high quality. Second thing is not doing any outreach. As I'd mentioned, build it and they will come. Does not work unless, again, you're some ginormous site, have some ginormous audience, and people will be sharing it for you. The next thing, as we kind of saw with Fractal's example of perceptions of perfection, is that there's no emotional component. There's no strong sense of surprise or excitement or urgency or sadness that will then kind of provoke people that they want to tell someone about it or share it with their readers. Nobody cares is a huge one. I've had that experience plenty of times where I've created something or done something, and then, all right, I'm going to email, cold email all these people that are great targets and I thought would like this, and then, be emailing 400 people and then crickets, right? Because it's very easy to create something that no one really cares about. And then incentives. Again, if I have a 400-word blog post that I think is great, it's not really strong enough to be a tipping point that someone's like, oh, I need to, this is really cool, I checked this out, and I want to talk about it, I want to write a blog post about it, I want to share it, all these things, right? The bar is constantly being raised on the web because there's so much information and so much noise. So to really stand out, it has to be something really special that makes someone feel like they want to link to it. Some pro tips: see what has worked for others, create awesome stuff, share it through outreach. And this is maybe just more of my way of thinking about SEO, but it's really an investment. I really think about it long term. I really think about it as we might have some very upfront costs in month one or the first 6 months, whatever it might be. But over time, we're creating a source of traffic to a business, to a website, that then will convert into sales, into customers, clients, whatever we want to think of it as. So SEO has this amazing, beautiful thing that I think is the reason a lot of us do it, is that it's monthly recurring traffic. Every month you're getting visitors, X amount per month. And that monthly recurring traffic is just a beautiful stream of prospects, potential leads, potential customers that then converts into either monthly recurring revenue, or if you have a subscription model like a SaaS, it's monthly recurring revenue growth. And that's just beautiful. So when you think about it from a long-term investment standpoint, from an ROI standpoint, the ROI continues to go. So, traffic we might acquire over these next 6 months can continue for the 12 months after that ends and the additional 12 months after. So, going on, it's obviously unpredictable and we don't know what the outcomes will be. But if we do something high quality that will be more immune to algorithm updates, then I feel that we're creating the most amount of value for the business and the highest ROI we can attain. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was good.
Just kind of upbeat pace. Those of us who are running out of steam needed. So
yeah.
Thank you for that as well. Am I back on?
Yep. Very cool.
Excellent. So thank you very much. Any questions in the chat? I think there's one from Charles. Have you ever had any success with broken link building or any tips? I guess slightly different than where the presentation went. I think that question was quite early, but if you've got any thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, no worries. I think probably much like you guys, I've tried and tested all kinds of things. You read about something that someone's doing and you're like, all right, this makes sense. I'm going to go do it. And I didn't have much success with broken link building. And the reason I suspect, and I've heard the opposite case from other people. Someone was telling me that that's like one of their go-to methods. But the reason I suspect is because if I'm looking at a website that maybe the webmaster or the owner hasn't done anything with it or hasn't looked at it or updated anything in the last 4 years, and I'm reaching out to him like, hey, man, you got this broken link on your site. Why don't you point it to my site? Obviously, you don't say it like that, but that's sort of like the proposition, let's put a better link there. Here's a new resource for you. If that guy doesn't care about his website anymore, if he doesn't have, I think it comes back to incentive, right? Is someone really incentivized to go make that effort, go back to an old blog post that they haven't looked at for a long time and go make that change? And I think the level of resistance there is much higher versus someone who's creating new content today. That's why pitching PR and journalists is extremely hard to get results out of unless you really know what you're doing. I know Lexi Mills is talking and maybe in a couple hours or so. She's really good at that. I'm certainly not. But people are creating new content today. So if they're thinking about what they're going to create, I've found those kinds of outreach campaigns to work better. I don't know if you guys have had an experience like that. Have you guys had success with broken link building?
Yeah, I mean, broken link building back before everyone was talking about it was amazing. You used to get like between a 12 and 30% link rate. So
yeah, but this is back in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
So
it's been
to me, it's like if it's coming up, it's like kind of behind the times.
Yeah, I think you can still do it and you'll still get links, but it's not some exciting new thing to you're going to get a lot of results from. You're just going to get your like standard 1 to 3% kind of link rate. And because it's broken link building, you've got to provide a suitable thing to go on the page. So you're not necessarily even going to get the links where you want them. They're going to have to go to whatever thing is similar or suitable for the page. So if you happen to have something that's perfect for a broken link building campaign, and that's where you want the links to go, you'll still get some links, but there's a lot of ifs and buts in whether you'd want to bother doing it or not, I think, for me anyway.
Yeah, and I think everything is testable, which takes time and effort and knowing that you're going to have failures, but I think trying it for yourself. And then, of course, realizing that all the nuances that you might not know, that as you go back and start reading more about what people are saying, listening more, you realize like, oh, man, I've been doing that all wrong. I blasted out 100 cold emails and I never addressed the person's first name or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. First names are overrated. If you start all your emails with dude, but using the 0 key instead of the O's, that's the secret sauce for broken link building. I had one question, just because I've had this chat with James Finlayson from Verve Search a few times, a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek bit of banter we've had a couple of times, because he would agree with you 100% in terms of the the big content, big links, get some initial traction with PR. I mean, it's almost could have heard him doing your presentation and it would have seemed pretty in place. But where we disagree is the feasibility of very small sites and businesses doing it. I just can't see a local plumber, pulling this off outside maybe the local paper links to their piece of content. If you work with big brands, I think, the Guardian over here in the UK or the, TechCrunch or New York Times or something's more likely to pick up your interesting piece of data than if you're Joe the plumber. He does have some cool examples of when he's managed to pull it off, but I would argue that he's exceptionally talented at that kind of content, and that the local business he worked with was lucky to get him earlier in his career when he was cheaper. But I would say, as a general rule, I would imagine most small businesses can't execute this kind of stuff. How do you feel?
I fully agree. And actually, when I was finalizing this yesterday, I had the thought in my mind to add a slide to try to put that caveat in, because a lot of this is aspirational. A lot of this is super hard to execute, right? This is like ideal world. You have a $1 bajillion budget. Oh yeah, spend $100,000, go make this amazing tool that does all these cool things, get developers, get it beautifully designed, right? Most, just like you're saying, small businesses don't have that. It's not feasible. So it's totally true. And I think a lot of it basically depends on budget, depends on investment. And if it's if you're doing it on behalf of a client, it's sometimes hard for them to believe and see the ROI it can have. And if you're doing it as yourself as a business owner, you see the risk of putting in all this time and effort and work and then it fails. And I think we've all had those experiences. So yeah, obviously, if you're a small business, if you're one-man business, or your budget is more shoestring. And I've seen some interesting things where people on a shoestring budget, they will just hustle and put a lot of time and work. But of course, if you're doing the work, right, if you're out there, like you said, you're fixing leaks and pipes and putting in, if you're doing the plumbing, you're not sitting there doing some fascinating data visualization. You just don't have time for that. It's not realistic.
Yeah, and I think I was expecting you to agree with James and me to be too tired to defend myself, so I'm pleased to. I think the real challenge is, even when you have a client that can afford it, for agencies that are trying to pitch it, is you can't test it small. Like if you do a small one, it'll be naff and it won't work. So you have to do it kind of all in, where it's good enough to pull it off, or not at all. You may as well just do something else, like because at least if you do a small broken link building campaign, just to go back to that example, you'll get some links. If you do a naff piece of content because you wanted to test with a tiny budget to convince the client, you'll probably just convince them that this was all a terrible idea and they shouldn't have done it at all. So you have to kind of get full buy-in for this kind of thing, or none at all and don't do it. In between is a disaster, I think, more often than not.
Yeah, it's a really strange thing. Like, I find myself in this situation, and you guys might feel similarly, where you kind of know the potential and the value of what you can do and bring in. You know what you can do for a website to bring in all this traffic and make things amazing. You might, if you look at it across several campaigns, hypothetically, right? Let's say you could do 4 different campaigns. And 2 of them might be totally terrible, maybe 3 of them, but maybe that one thing that really resonates. Or you could spend more time strategizing on why you would focus more time or effort on this direction than that. And it can fail. But you guys, it sounds like, I feel like you guys have had this experience where you've seen a site rank and get traffic, and it totally changed the business, where it's like, wow, this business is doing freaking well because they're getting whatever, thousands of visitors a day or something insane like that. And you can see that. And then it's kind of hard to turn around and show that to someone else and share that experience when they don't see that. Or they've, done some work in the past that's been, gotten them 0 results. I was on the phone with someone yesterday and he's like, yeah, the last 3 companies I work with, it was like, we got no results. And I'm sitting there trying to explain to him like why I'm different, how I'm going to get him results. And that's like the whole thing. SEO seems like a very technical sort of thing, but at the end of the day, I think it's very results driven, performance based, and it's not easy. It's like any kind of performance or results driven thing is like, there are tons of ways to screw up. And I screw up too. It's like, it's hard.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. I'm sure everyone in the chat will have experienced someone poisoning the well for us beforehand with some just nonsensy campaign, Web 2.0 and stuff like it's 1999, and got no results. And then, especially if you're talking to someone who's had 3 agencies in and they haven't moved the needle, I mean, that's pretty horrific. Try and do some more of the public questions. Gary Kerwin wants to know your Twitter handle.
Oh, yeah, it's just my name, Tom Casano. Cool. Sorry, I wasn't seeing the chat, so I'm also curious what people might be saying.
How long do you typically see backlinks taking effect?
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say how long do you typically find for backlinks to take effect?
Sorry, what did you say?
How long typically does it take for backlinks to take effect in your experience from designers and you?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' experience. It's really a weird thing because it takes time for the links. So if we do outreach today and send an email out today, it'll take time for that person to actually create that link. Then when they create the link, it takes Google time to actually find and crawl and index that link. If it's a very tiny site, it'll take much longer. If it's a huge site, they might index it within hours, within a day. And then how long does it take for Google to change their results? Well, they can update it relatively instantly, but I feel like it doesn't always work that way. So when I'm starting anything, I usually say like we're looking at 3 to 6 months, and it's more comfortable, right? We can see results, I would say, in like 2 months. We might even see results earlier, depending on how authoritative, or if it's an amazing campaign. And again, Lexi Mills is going to talk later. If she's doing PR and she's just getting these amazing high domain authority links from media sites and newspapers and stuff, well, I think we're going to see results much more quickly within maybe a week. I don't know. I'm curious to hear. What about you guys?
It varies a lot. It seems to be quicker than it used to be. A couple of years ago, you'd say to people, "Oh yeah, and nothing will happen for 6 months." I still say that to people because there are cases when it does seem to take a long time. But I had one guy in a pretty competitive finance space got us to do outreach for 10 links, and he was like, "Yeah, I just want to see what happens now." And I'm like, "Well, nothing's going to happen. What are you, crazy?" And he showed me his stats like 2 months later. He's like, "Yeah, it's gone really well. Let's have some more work." So it really varies enormously between outliers like that, which are obviously ridiculous, and people that do some substantial numbers and they do wait 6 months to see a big movement. And it depends what you're doing, of course, which I guess brings us on nicely to designers news other question. So I guess a lot of the time when you're doing this kind of work where you're hitting up the media outlets and stuff, you're going to get the same journalist maybe picks up 2 of your different content pieces at The Guardian or something. How do you feel about the fact, when you get the same domains linking to different pages on your site from these kind of campaigns, more than if you were kind of manually outreaching, you probably would just pitch a different site or something. But with this, you're getting what you get.
Yeah, I think it's always strange because as SEOs, we're always kind of trying to understand the way Google's doing things and follow best practices, but it's always a black box, and there's always like speculation and just testing and seeing what other people are saying. But my understanding is, there's the basically law of diminishing returns, where the first link from a referring domain is great, second link, okay, by 3rd, 5th, or maybe it's by 10th, 20th. I don't know at how fast it diminishes, but at some point, it was just decreasing the amount of link equity or link juice we can be getting to the site. So, yeah, obviously we would love a new link from a new website. But yeah, if you have a second one, third one, especially from a high domain authority site, plus the anchor text can be different, the pages linked to can be different. It can still add value and help the site rank. But would you basically agree with that, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I see it pretty similarly. I mean, if you think about it, internal links from your own site to itself help things rank. So, I wouldn't have thought getting 2-3 links from The Guardian or the New York Times, well, I guess the New York Times is paywalled now. So insert non-paywalled US newspaper example. I wouldn't have thought it would be a big problem. Obviously, you wouldn't go after it like to get 100 by the same columnist or something, but I definitely think the second big link from a big site would still have value. Like you say, 100, not so much by the time you get to the 100th one. But there's got to be value there if you think about it logically, because if linking to yourself from your own site can impact how things rank, then surely getting links from someone more authoritative than yourself to a couple of different pages can help too. So that's how I would look at it anyway.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people speculating that even no-follow links, if they're getting clicks or they're getting referral traffic, or they're on real websites that are getting visits, then they actually do pass some form of link equity, which I think Google says no. But I think other people have seen no-follow links have some value as well.
Yeah, I forget who, because it's been such a long series of presentations, but someone was talking about that earlier. Google using all the browser data and visitor data so much more now that, if a no-follow link is driving tons of traffic, it's his position was that any kind of traffic that you were getting was powerful. I really forget which presentation that was in, though. It seems like 6 days ago now or something. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely come up today already, that kind of theme.
Are you guys sick of SEO by now, or are you going to take like an SEO vacation for a couple of days?
Yeah, I'm not doing anything till Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, I'm just tired.
It's impressive. Such a
Yeah,
marathon.
I mean, there's been some really good stuff. I mean, a lot of the presentations have been thought provoking, and I've got some good notes from earlier when I could still write. So yeah, no, I think people have some really cool stuff to watch in the replays, and it's been varied enough. Like no one's talked about the exact same thing at all. So I think there's something for everyone in the 24 hours, except for the bit where Garrett and I were by ourselves and tired. That probably wasn't too interesting, but that won't be in the replays, so you don't have to worry about seeing that again, everyone. So you're all safe from that now. Well, except for the next 2 hours, because we haven't got Lexi till 1, have we, or something?
7 a.m. Central, so 8 on the East Coast, yeah, something like that.
2 hours away. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
So is someone coming on now, or is it?
You're here for 3 hours. Didn't anyone tell you?
I got a muffin. I'm ready, and 2 hard-boiled eggs.
Well, I mean, more questions, people in the chat. We need to keep this going for at least another 20 minutes so that we haven't got 2 hours to fill.
Oh, so is there a gap?
Steve we were going to talk some outreach stuff, but honestly, we're out of stuff to talk. Like, it's not that.
Well, I guess we can do some of the Q&A I've got as like a joint for the three of us. Let me just dig up some of the questions. 1 second. You guys just chat about something else for a minute while I dig these up.
Well, Garrett, do you do outreach yourself, or have you been heavily involved in link building, or do you do a lot of on-site stuff instead?
Yeah, so we're at Reach Creator. We're doing like over 1,500 outreach links a month between all our clients. Quite a bit. Like you said, outreach is not easy. It's something that is extremely difficult to scale, and the whole reason we ended up offering outreach as a service is in our consulting, it's just what we are known for, and that's how we move the needle. And we were just kind of burnt out in that stuff. And we found a way over like the last 6-7 years to somewhat systemize it, but still maintain the personalization that's required in it. That a lot of people truly can't do, and it is extremely difficult. And it's I don't know anyone doing it at our scale on such a variety of niches, I guess, because it's all sorts of different clients. It might be one thing if you're doing a couple thousand links in true outreach to the same site or the same areas, but to be able to break down a team of just like the 10 people and spread it across so many different ideas and different topics, it is extremely tough. And
you're doing 1,500 links a month?
Yeah. They're enough now, yeah.
So like how many emails a month is that?
Take a guess.
Yeah, that's proprietary information, so we won't be answering that one.
Yeah, it's a lot.
More than 1,500.
You guys are creating the web.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do what you said was bad. People with not what we do, but people have got content that's difficult for people to want to link to. We have to convince them.
Yeah, no, and that's hard. Like I've had those scenarios, or like the website or website owner themselves or the client themselves doesn't see that there's nothing really great to link to. It makes it hard, right? And then your results.
Because I'm totally on board with you. Like in the idealistic, perfect world, everyone would have awesome shit and that's only like there would be no need to even do links because the only stuff on the internet would be super valuable. Not like 99% of the internet is just total garbage. And we have to like separate out the 1% of good stuff from 99% of shit. And it's like, okay, obviously we can't have it like that because there's always going to be someone that is coming up with bullshit content. So we gotta. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm just
no, it's true. Like a lot of what I said, I kind of have a strange feeling about because it's much more aspirational. And in practice, the practice is not really how I put it. This is like the ideal model, ideal world, right? The infinite budget. This is how you do it, right? But realistically, the plumber with $1,000 you're not doing that.
No, I mean,
you're
you
submitting
know,
it to a directory because
and
it's fast.
and you know, he only needs like 10 good links, and he's so far ahead of his competition. You know, he
Because they're
doesn't.
not even aware of SEO or doing SEO. Or
Yeah, yeah. So a couple more questions. Luckily, Andrew Halliday says, if you could only do one type of link building, what would you do? And I guess I'll add to that it has to be appropriate to you staying in business. So you can't just say you'll do the $100,000 link baits. It's got to be one that you could do for all your clients and stay in business.
Yeah. It's a tough question. I don't know. I guess I'd want to say I guess Harrow. I actually want to make a slide on that. Have you guys heard of Harrow? Help a reporter out.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
So, like, our whole outreach has always been a really PR-based approach where I guess we've always just bypassed stuff like Harrow because we've found the ways to, like, do it on our own and for clients, get them featured in local newspapers or national newspapers or relevant. Like, I don't like to use the word blog, but like, websites that are actually super relevant, and there's, even though it's an artificial link by definition, it's super natural reason for them to be covering it. And even though we had to pitch them, obviously, the same way we'd pitch a reporter, they never would have found that piece of content is without someone bringing it to their attention.
I think that Harrow, they get so many pitches. You need to have something that really stands out. That would be my main takeaway.
Yeah.
That's true.
They get a lot of pitches. I mean, I've spoke to someone who put something up there and they got like 350 pitches. I mean, you're almost better off pitching someone cold. I mean,
no, it's true. It's gotten a lot more competitive, and I think the requests that are more specific versus like if you're a business owner, we're looking for a quote. Well, like everyone's a business, or not everyone, but like maybe in our world, there's a lot of entrepreneurs. But I think the nice thing about that is that they're actually looking for X. And I haven't done Harrow for a little bit of time, but when I was doing it, systematizing is so important, like you were saying, Garrett. And, I realized being really fast to respond is really important. Actually spending 15 minutes to think of something really clever to say that could help make their story. It's just like outreach, right? You're just always trying to refine and increase your conversion rate, even if it's by just a little bit. And obviously, if you have relationships already, like I imagine you guys might, and I have in the past as well, it's like, oh, I might have a connection over there. I could just shoot him an email. He knows who I am, and he'll help me with trying to earn a link. So it's tough. I really think that link building is like one of the most challenging, or maybe it's the most challenging aspect of SEO, and it's so easy to just kind of not do. Right? It was kind of like the last thing on my priority list of doing SEO in my career, which was like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff on my website because I could just do that. Like, I could write some content. That's easy. I can create a website. That's easy. I could, right? And then you actually try to go ahead and do link building, and you're just like, what is going on here? Like, this is impossible.
Yeah, the first week of trying to do it, anyone, even if you've done the best course in the web, I don't know what that would be, but what you've done everything you can to prepare, and you sit down and you start sending some emails out, you're not going to be happy with that first week's productivity. That's for sure. I'm going to ask one that, Andrew Halliday as well. I'll let him have his live question in first. I'm going to skip the best because you've talked a lot about what your aspirational link building campaign would be. What's your worst link building campaign you've ever tried to do?
Oh, man. So I did a link building campaign that was actually, this was like 3 months ago, for a parenting website. And again, this is where this is kind of what can suck about trying to be ultra white hat, is that when you're trying to do everything by the book, it just might not be nearly as effective. So it's a parenting website. It's actually like a dad blog, but to me it's parenting and mom blog, tons of mom bloggers. Like, this is going to be perfect, right? It's a niche, it's an industry. And did all this data. So I followed Fractal's model, who I mentioned, who's all over Moz, and so a lot of it is like, oh, you just do a survey, right? We could do a survey of 300 people, 1,000 people, get all this data back, and it's really interesting to find out, like, you know, X percentage of people. Like, there were some interesting stats. Like, I think 28% or whatever of people, parents thought spanking was okay and good, and I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't personally agree, but I wouldn't have expected found it. So there were some things I thought were pretty interesting that came out of it. Did the whole, you know, all these like nice little charts and like pictures and content created. Did all this outreach. You know, I have like an old list of like all these mom bloggers that I still think, you know, most of them are relevant. Or most of them exist and like read their emails and stuff. And then I think we got like one backlink of a domain authority of like 35. And some of the mom bloggers did respond like, oh, okay, like just send us $200, $100. We'll do a guest post or a sponsored post. And I was like, I guess I could have agreed or could have done it. But I was just like, no, that's not how this is supposed to work. And that's sort of where the rubber meets the road of like how it's supposed to work. And like, you know, we're white hat. Right. We're not buying links. We're not paying you to post our guest post. But the reality is, this is how mom bloggers are like paying their bills and like feeding their kids, right? Pay me $100.
That's how the whole mom blogger industry works. You pay them or give them stuff. I mean, obviously there's loads you can get links from for free, but they're so used to just having brands, you know, PR people doing influencer marketing and stuff, just coming up to them and saying, here's this thing and $100. Can you write about it and make sure your kid's sat next to it when you take the photos? That's kind of their game. So yeah. I mean, I'd say exact same situation. Our worst ever link building campaign was for one of our own sites, and we did a survey, and no one gave a fuck about our results either. So surveys are fun because either everyone else finds it as interesting as you, or everyone else just looks at it and it's like, yeah, you know, some people still think spanking's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And no one cares. It's kind of like, I mean, yours was more interesting than ours, I guess. Ours we thought was interesting, but it was a bit geeky and boring, and literally no one cared. So, live and learn.
Like when I look at some of like the content that Brian Dean or the studies, I think he has some studies where they're doing this huge, you know, analysis of data with Ahrefs or whatever company was. It's like, oh man, I don't know if he personally spent a bajillion hours on that, but somebody did, right? Someone like invested a bunch of money to create that kind of content. And again, you know, I don't have that budget for my own business, and you know, plenty of people and businesses and clients out there don't have that budget.
Right.
There's just a ton of things that don't work. There's a lot of things that don't work.
There is. I mean, so yeah, be careful with surveys unless, you know, you've got some really smart idea. I've got a question here that I was asked ages ago, and I've never tested it, so I have no idea. Have you ever used handwritten letters when doing outreach?
I'm sure you guys are doing that, right? When you're sending out your No, I've never have. I do think relationships really help. That's something that Rand Fishkin has said many times in the past. And I think the problem is it's much harder, it takes much longer, it's harder to scale. He talks about, influencers and authorities and having them amplify your content and your message. I think, in practice, trying to do that takes a really long time, a lot of effort, a lot of everything. But I could see why a handwritten letter could be a cooler approach, right? And it's not just getting instantly deleted or marked as spam in your inbox. You're like going to remember that person much longer. I think that's interesting. We've done phone calls, right? We've called up universities. And sometimes that's so much easier because you could be sitting there emailing the wrong person all day long, only to find out, oh yeah, this person just like transferred over that person. They're like, oh, here's my email address, or yeah, send over that content you want to share. Obviously very time consuming, and just like you guys, scaling and training people to do that stuff, because personally I find outreach extremely tedious. Mm-hmm. And nowadays I really don't do any of it other than maybe stuff for my own business, but having someone to sit there and send emails, do phone calls, or if it's some other form of building a relationship,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good tip for everyone, because when I used to do it myself, I would phone people, and I got some really good links doing it, and your success rate is like 1 in 2 or something. Obviously, you're never going to get that on emails, no matter how good your content is, but it's hard to train someone to, 1, do it well, and 2, want to do it because people hate phoning outbound to people cold.
The nice thing is you're not selling something, and if you think of it from the mindset of trying to be helpful and find the right person, then yeah, there could definitely be some hangups. But again, I think it's the value proposition, and I think if the the script or the first sentences are just about like, do you want to link to our thing, versus like, oh, we found in this new study that your students or your whoever's might be interested in, I think it can change things. But yeah, I think the other good thing is it's not like it's not like a skill where you have to pay someone like a very high rate to do, right? I think a lot of people are capable of doing it. So you can have an intern, or you can have some people that could just talk on the phone. It's not like a hard thing to do.
What's your go-to link building tactic for affiliate sites?
So yeah, as I mentioned, doing university outreach, so like a scholarship, we found to work fairly well. What was the other thing I was going to say? Not a very high quality one, but one that's easy to execute is doing a giveaway or doing a sweepstakes, which you could just earn links, domain authority, 20 to, I don't know, 50, just by giving away a free $100 something. Actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure. And I'm constantly experimenting, right? We actually put a job posting online for our own website thinking, I wonder if this will get backlinks. I think we might have gotten like 1 or 2 so far, but that's kind of cool because it's more of like real company stuff. As I think Ronell Smith, I think that's his thing. What was the other one I was going to tell you? There was another. Oh, we launched a podcast. And then I've soon realized like, oh, we're getting links for, the iTunes, the Apple link is no follow. So there's that, but then there's some like regular links you're getting just because you're, I don't know, having a podcast. So it's really tough. I wish I had a better answer. Like for an affiliate site, I do this tactic. I don't think I have that.
We did that in poker. We interviewed people on video, and the people who we interviewed almost always linked to their episode. And they were obviously from their poker blogs because they were some kind of poker instructor or whatever that had written a book or something. So we were getting links from really high authority sites in the same niche, which I guess is pretty hard to do in the gambling space. So if you can be bothered or have the inclination to do some kind of show, that's definitely a cool one. I mean, in terms of affiliates, I mean, I would do what was described
makes sense to do naturally. Let's say an affiliate site for Amazon that you're doing hair gel, you're doing pomade, you're doing hairspray or something, the 3 of those. What types of sites and publications and stuff like that would be linking to your site naturally? You'd probably be, let's use Mommy Blogs for example. They might be talking about mothers, doing an article on how to get ready in 5 minutes and using a hairspray that you just fucking sprayed in there, brush it in, and bam, get the 3 kids out the door on the bus or something. And then you might have a link from a site that's talking about single dad doing the same shit. I buy this pomade, I just run it through my hair really quick, brush it, little Joey gets his teeth brushed, I'm out the door. Then might be a guy, some single man chauvinist website where I fucking spike up my hair like Pauly D with this pomade, and I go out to the club and I'm doing this shit, and I'm fucking linking to this site because I use XXX triple hold pomade because my hair is 19 inches long, but it's still straight up and down.
That sounds more like a paid editorial placement than
I mean, it. Okay, let's not use XXX. But you start thinking, like, what kind of stuff would happen naturally in the world, and if you just forget about the internet, what if people were writing newspaper articles 50 years ago? How they would mention stuff, and I guess that's how I approach it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just make do what was described in this presentation, but do it light. Like, instead of making, a groundbreaking $10,000 designer piece of content, just make something informative and useful, and pitch it to people that would link to it. Use internal links. I've got a case study about it, which I will link to.
About the XXX 14-inch hair pomade?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
I see you're using it today in your beard.
Yeah. Always in the beard. It's the best place for it. Yeah, I mean, Distill did a really good job with this insurance client. I mean, you can't get a more boring niche. You know, they just made up some content that was on topic enough to make sense. You know, their insurance company was a business insurance client, so all the content's business content. So the people who click on, like, someone who's looking for the small business guide to WordPress might actually buy their insurance as well, because they're just starting a business and putting their website up. It's you know, the kind of time they might review their insurance as well. So it's not even totally stupid from this is just link bait. These are actually the right people that buy their product are going to be coming to it anyway. But you see, they just put like loads of those guides up and pitch them out. So I don't know they actually do their insurance, but if they were just an insurance broker or an affiliate, the same logic would apply. Just come up with an angle, make some good content. Doesn't need to be crazy like in the presentation. You're going to have to do more hustle. You're going to have to do more outreach than if you make something amazing. But, you know, you can balance it to your budget. You know, the bigger your budget, the more you should tend towards spending more on the content to try and get those huge results. The less your budget is, the more you should go for consistency and the kind of stuff that was done on this campaign where, you know, you look how simple the link baits are. You know, huge amounts of money weren't spent on those. You know, they're just simple. You know, they look fancier than they are. You know, some of them are just pages with some videos embedded on. It's like a flowchart with a couple of videos embedded, and that's it.
Yeah, no, and going back to what Garrett was saying, one thing I wanted to talk about is like the relevance of links versus the domain authority.
Oh, yeah.
And my pitch is usually that it's beautiful if you can have one referring domain that is hyper relevant, very authoritative, and a ton of trust. Right? I look at trust flow as like the other important thing. But it's really not the case of how it usually works, right? The relevant, and in this case, maybe it'd be like fashion. I would think of like fashion or beauty or whatever of being the niche. And, you know, the domain authority of those sites could be more like 20 to 50 or 60 or something. And if you want some high domain authority backlinks, you're probably getting them in ways that are not, like this perfect example you just gave from Distilled with this insurance company. It's pretty boring, right? Who wants a link, you know, to these insurance boring pieces of content or whatever. So, you know, you take it some other direction that at least it can get some traction, right? At Fractal, they talk about creating something with broad appeal. So broad appeal is like, yeah, if I'm just like making this hair gel, a pomade, whatever, you know, we can make it more broadly appealing to people's looks, their fashion, right? And then it could go in 1,000 different directions.
Yeah, that's where it
might
gets
have
fun.
some of the yeah. We talk about our beard gels and we talk about our eyebrow gels. It's a terrible joke. What was the the other thing I found is that you know, there's certain pages, especially for like an e-commerce site or like a money page, it might be really hard to get links directly to that page naturally, right? If we're doing guest posting or something, we could just create those links. But what can work quite well is having another page that is more link worthy, is more appealing, is like this insurance company where it's, what was it? It's like the WordPress guide for beginners. But getting links to that page will raise the domain authority of the entire site. So what's this phrase? A rising tide lifts all boats. And, you know, of course, you can have internal links from that page over to other pages and try to like redistribute that link equity. So that's the way I think about that.
And I think with an affiliate site, that's going to be your best route, because your affiliate review pages are going to be pretty brutal as far as people being super excited about linking to them is concerned. You know, your best top 10 hair gels page is not what people are like super excited about editing their blog, like was talked about earlier in the main presentation. That people aren't like, oh yeah, I've got to get a post up about that right away.
So I don't know how much you guys talk about this. The kind of link building and outreach you guys do, is there a leaning towards kind of like a guest posting aspect to it, or is there a leaning towards having some relationships, or
the main lean is towards pitching a piece of content. We encourage our clients to have some, I mean, generally not designed like the Distilled piece, because our clients generally have smaller budgets for content, but certainly something that people would want to link to. so that we can pitch people that cover that kind of topic. So it's kind of the model of that distilled case study, but scaled down another notch in terms of difficulty of the content. We would then pitch that to people.
And yeah, this might be a tough question, or I don't know. I have some like weird feelings around this, but like, how do you feel if like someone comes back to you with like, oh, okay, we'll post it, but it's $100 or whatever? Like, what's your feeling?
If our clients have ordered an unpaid campaign from us, if they come back and say it will do it for $1, we won't even pay them the $1.
So it's kind of like depends on where the client stands.
If the client has ordered an incentivized campaign where they're happy with incentives, then we'll do it. If they've ordered a non-incentivized campaign, even if it's $1.50, send us a $5 Amazon voucher, whatever they want, no matter how small, then they're out if they want money. And then, there's enough people out there. Like if you're pitching, like take that small business WordPress guide, you're pitching something that's useful to business bloggers and WordPress sites, whatever other starting your business type sites, all these kind of sites that might want to link to it. It's a useful piece of content. There's enough of them out there. The one that wants $100, you can just walk away from them and leave them to it.
And then what's kind of like a minimum domain authority you guys look for that you think is worthwhile to still get links from? And of course, for a small, sorry.
Yeah, we don't use Moz at all. Their crawler's just too slow now and too behind Ahrefs. And most of our clients are agencies, so they've all switched to Ahrefs too a long time ago. So our last Moz using agency client stopped using it, I think 9 months ago, and they were like the last holdout where we had to have Moz data available to us. So we use Ahrefs DR, and again, it's up to the client. We'll work with whatever minimums they're looking for on Ahrefs DR.
I've had the same problem, and I was reading an AMA from Rand Fishkin on Reddit a few weeks ago, and he was saying himself, like, yeah, our indexing of the web is terrible, and it needs to be better, and it's like really we're sucking there. Well, and it's true.
It's easy for him to finally own up to it now that he's leaving. These guys just aren't doing their job properly. I'm off.
Yeah, yeah, but it's true. But the problem I find domain authority to be the most insightful, even though it's missing like whatever 70% of what Ahrefs is missing. But then I find, because it's on a logarithmic scale, I find it to be more helpful in demonstrating like how authoritative a site is. Whereas I find domain rating to be that I find so many sites to be in this 40 to 60 place that it's really hard to differentiate. On a domain authority scale, they might be like very different places. Whereas on a
I don't know. If the way you're finding the sites is appropriate, and I will share another one of my articles for people who want to read more than my quick answer. If the way you're finding the sites is appropriate, you tend to be finding better sites in the first place. So, like if you read a lot of SEO blogs, they tell you to do things like search for in URL guest post plus hair gel, and then any site that writes about hair gel and has a guest post page, you'll get easy links. But the problem is you're finding all the sites that just rank for some word plus guest post. So if you're finding the sites the right way, it doesn't really matter whether you're using DA, DR, or TrustFlow. You're finding sites, so you're searching for just hair gel, and you're finding the top sites that have got articles about hair gel. They're sites that are already trusted. They have loads of articles about that topic. They have a body of content around hair gel. You're pitching better sites on average anyway to start with before you even get any offers back in of people that might want to link to it. So you tend to find when you get to the better sites, there's not much. They correlate pretty closely. Like Ahrefs DR trends slightly higher. So like DR40 is about DA30, but within they trend pretty closely beyond that. Where, as Charles is pointing out, they all have their weaknesses is when you pick up the kind of crappier sites, they can still have a pretty good DR or DA in certain circumstances because it's just taking into account links that they've got, not whether they're actually ranking or their performance in any other way. And he's just seconding what you were saying, that he likes Majestic as well. I mean, there's arguments for all of them, but I think our focus is on finding relevant sites and finding them the right way and pitching them well, and then it doesn't matter what metrics you're using. To be honest, we just have the minimums because clients want some kind of minimums. They feel like they're paying for something. If it's on our own sites, we don't even care as long as it's relevant and on a site that appears to be performing well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's a really good point. And I think that the models that these companies are using to create these metrics are all very similar anyway, just like you said. So I think it's a really good point. I finally started looking at the chat. Designers and you was saying, what's your view about backlink coming from profile page or forum pages? And what happened?
I was just laughing at the question. It's going to depend on what you do, isn't it? I mean, if you're a pest control firm and you're a member of the National Pest Control Association, and you're like chair of one of their boards, and they give you a profile there and you've got a link, then that's going to be pretty useful. If you register for an infographic forum and post your link there, it's going to be pretty terrible. So that's my view on profile links.
Yeah, and I think like what you guys were saying, I think if it's like a plumber, right, and the competitors are doing like hardly any SEO, then it's almost like any kind of not awful links are okay, right? As long as it's not awful. But then if you have like, a site that, well, I guess I'm speaking in domain authority, which I don't know if it translates over as well, but if you have like a bigger site or a little bit of a bigger business, it might be, it's definitely not worth doing. I was also looking at the other one from Gary Kerwin. How do you find infographic campaigns?
I don't know. If it's really good, then it can be really good. But generally speaking, I find it's better to just either make something interactive or write a really good piece of content. Like, I'd rather have a 5-page really deep guide than a really pretty infographic.
Yeah.
Did that work?
I mean, Matt Cutts didn't call them, what did he call them? Crapographics or something? Infographics? I don't remember what he called them now, but some of them are pretty terrible. If yours is pretty terrible, then you're not going to get good links. And
and the weird thing, like I've seen in a totally different area, like in Facebook video, if you're trying to do Facebook video on a site, on a page for a business, you could basically rip off other videos, right? You could just take an existing video off of YouTube, put your brand thing on there, and it's like now yours. And I think the same thing is relatively true with infographics, right? You could look at 3 other infographics, take pieces of information, and just recompile it into your own and slap on your logo. Obviously, not best practice, not a good way to build authority. But if you're looking for a quick and easy way to do it, you could do it that way. You can also scour the web. That's the way I was doing it. So like hiring someone to do research to find data points just from wherever on the web and then compile them into a way that makes the most sense. You could see which infographics have done the best in the space, right? There's BuzzSumo. There's other ways you could see what's been popular on social media or whatever, Pinterest. You could think about basically what might be most exciting or interesting or surprising, or think about the persona of the person you're trying to target and what would make sense for them to want to share. I think there's a lot of ways you can go about.
Cool. I've got quite a long one here. It's from Pro Pipper on Builder Society. He says, I don't know if this falls under outreach, but I have a question on finding similar companies to some of my best clients. I know on the Digital Crash Course, it goes over finding companies on Twitter and using tools like Twitonomy to find people, but it doesn't really solve my issue. I have some really good clients, let's say in the restaurant industry, for example. Let's say I deal with the corporate office of a national restaurant chain. How do I find contacts outreach to the corporate level execs of other national restaurant chains? So I guess that's more about getting business. So you've got an ideal client, you find like a niche where you're amazing, you have just the best results. How do you connect with the same decision makers at similar firms? What would your strategy be? Is the question, I guess.
Maybe I wasn't paying full attention, but I didn't fully understand. So this
All
guy
right, say imagine like you're doing a campaign for a restaurant chain for the first time, and it's amazing, and you're like, I want to work with every restaurant chain. I'm the best restaurant chain SEO in the world. I love this. This is what I want to do. How do you find more of those chains? How do you connect with them? How do you find the decision makers?
It's weird as an SEO agency myself. I don't follow that practice of niching yourself, and I've heard it 1,000 times, and I kick myself for doing it, and I of course have my own issues for not doing it, which is like, well, there's this client over here that's a SaaS I can help, and that client over there that's an e-commerce I can help. So it's like trying to be everything to everyone. Everyone says is terrible from a marketing standpoint. So I don't personally do that, because I think actually that the value of SEO that you can provide, and the main principles basically that can work across basically any type of website. It definitely gets different with an e-commerce site from like a news site, from other kinds of sites, info products or whatever. But yeah, I think that's a great like business development sales question for any agency or consultant. And I think you just approach it how you would like how any business might approach that, which is basically trying to create that list, find those restaurant chains that exist, right? So being very diligent and like methodical of like, you start with your spreadsheet, you've got 10, you've got 50, now you've got 100, however many there could possibly be, I have no idea. If you could like train someone else to help you do that, maybe it'll help save you money, save you time. And then you're just filling, that person's filling in all the information they can find out. It's like, all right, how do we start any kind of point of contact so they might have heard of me or get on their radar? I personally love Twitter for that. A lot of these businesses might not be on Twitter, or like doing that research of like, what's this guy's LinkedIn profile, or how do I kind of like, it's like trying to be smooth, if you're at a bar and there's like a girl you like, but you want to be smooth, you want it to be natural, like, oh, it just bumped into you, hi, that kind of, right? But it's not natural because you're trying too hard to be natural, but trying to find that sort of way. And a cold email can work. I really think that it can, especially if you have the time to not only personalize, but kind of have that human connection component part of it, of like why, real reason or mission or purpose of why I'm really connecting with you. Because I sincerely want to help you, right? I sincerely see, your traffic according to this is really low, or your domain rating is like only this, but I know tons of ways to help you out. So I think having a sincere connection can really help.
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn, you're absolutely right. That's where you're going to have the success. You need to rebrand your LinkedIn page to be 100% focused on that. You need your website to be 100% focused on your attempt to niche down. If you can write a book or do a webinar or something that's really heavily tailored to those people, you need to do that as well. That's kind of how I would approach it. I mean, I see the people that write books, targeting like accountancy firm marketing, that kind of stuff. They're not going to ever make any money from selling their book. They make their money from the people who read the book, hiring them as their agency. So, LinkedIn, book, webinar, get people into your funnel that way. That's what I would do. But like Tom here, we haven't chosen to niche ourselves down, so I can't be more useful than that.
Yeah, and I really, when I'm always trying to model and seeing what other marketers, other SEOs are doing that's working for them. And,
Excuse me, 1 second.
Yeah. People are probably all familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. And if you look at what he's doing even now, when he really doesn't have to, he's doing interviews. He's doing a podcast and he's interviewing people. And then you think of like, well, Oprah, how did she become so? I mean, she's Oprah, different story perhaps, but she basically interviewed people, right? Bring people on the show, interview them. And then Lewis Howes, he's doing interviews. I just think that it's a great way to build relationships and to build real connections, and also to document and create content, because it takes a really long time to come up with an idea. Like what you guys are doing here is perfect, right? You don't have to sit here and create 24 hours of content, and you're building relationships, you're meeting people, you're more positioned as an authority, because I think as the interviewer or the host or the curator, you're kind of like a step removed, and people's credibility can rub off on each other just because you're associated with each other. So I think for that guy's question, I think that can make a lot of sense. Just, it could be a podcast that nobody listens to, but you're building a relationship, you're building content, creating more value, building relationships.
Yeah, when you look at stuff that Oprah, whoever is doing, is it even, I mean, sure, when she was probably starting out, she obviously needed viewers to keep going, but at this point, does she really care if she's getting more viewers? Probably not. She's like yeah, like you said, she's a huge established brand at this point, but even in the SEO world, there's a point where it's probably a lower entry point than most people think. Like once you hit like 5,000 or 10,000 hits a month to a website, you just you've already been doing stuff right to some degree, probably. So you just kind of keep rolling over, like, don't really care about links, because all of a sudden I've been putting out all this good content. And yeah, maybe we built some links in the past, but I keep putting out good content, and whether it's interviews or podcasts or stuff on YouTube, got the following, and then all of a sudden, cool, I keep doing the hard work, the good stuff, it shares itself, and that's like the whole self-fulfilling prophecy of like the ideal information on the internet. And like I don't know.
Yeah, again, I think for me it's also aspirational, but if you look at on Ahrefs, like the new referring domains coming on to any, well, again, these are big brands, so it's hard to compare, but if you look at Moz or Brian Dean or any of them, you just see that like slope where they just keep increasing every week or every month. All these new referring domains come in. Like, how'd they get those? Were they emailing people? No. Like but they have that audience. They've built that presence, which as a startup you don't have. So I think that's the ideal place to be. And it's like, how can we get that trajectory higher, right? If we can get one referring domain naturally per month, how do we get that to 2 and 5 and 10? And that builds itself, like you said. And then it actually does matter the quality of the content you're creating. Whereas initially it's the 80-20 where Derek Halpern and Brian Dean talk about, 80% of time doing outreach or promotion or building relationships, 20% of time on content, because it really, really sucks when you create amazing content and you never email a soul. It's not going to go well for you.
Right. And then like another way to look at it, obviously we want our content to be perfect, and whatever perfect means is arbitrary. But at what point do you say this is good enough to establish 50 links to it, where it's like 98% perfect, or that's something I struggle with. Like I go through shit and it's like, oh, this could be way better, but then you sit down like a week later and it's like, okay, this is way better than anything anybody else has already done. But like I don't know if it's just OCD stuff or whatever, but
yeah, I mean I'm a perfectionist myself, and I struggle with the same thing. And then I try to get myself to focus on the things that drive impact, things that are meaningful.
Yeah.
And that's hard because there's so many distractions. And especially with SEO, like I remember when I would sit there just optimizing the alt image tags and like the file names of images. And that was what I read, and that's what you're supposed to do. So I did all that stuff, and then nothing happened. And now I just stay so far away from that stuff, because if it doesn't drive impact, it's not good for the website or business I'm doing it for. It's not good for me. And the same is true in your own business, right? If you guys only have so many hours in a day, where do you really need to focus your time and effort? It's a challenge, I think, for any business owner or anyone just working at a job. Like, you have to focus on what matters.
For sure. What else should we talk about? Yeah.
Should I hand you a coffee?
Struggling, man, struggling.
3 hours and 15 minutes ago.
There was no naps
Seems like
involved?
too long.
You guys didn't have any nap breaks, no?
No
Nap
napping allowed.
breaks. I didn't. Did you sleep last night, Steve? I only got a couple hours of sleep last night too.
I didn't get enough. Nowhere near.
So great. I just love the journey of this thing because it feels terrible. You look
It's
back at this in
ridiculous.
2
It's
weeks, you're just
ridiculous,
gonna love
yeah.
it. Is this a yearly annual event or what?
We're
This is the
hoping so,
first time
yeah.
we've done it.
You're
and-
like, we're never doing this again.
Well, it's like, should do it again next year, but now it's like,
Yeah, don't ask us now.
It's the mission, you know. That's
Yeah, we're not even sure we can make it the 3 hours and 15 minutes, let alone do it again.
I love it. I remember reading about Zuckerberg and like, why is this guy so successful? Like, how has he done this, right? And one of his big things is he's a mission-driven company, and the mission just is the purpose that drives you through things. So it's really cool seeing you guys just, pounding beers for 24 hours so you can make it.
Well, there's been a lot of water and coffee as well.
A lot of bathroom breaks.
It's been a strange, yeah, a lot of those. Yeah.
let's see, I've drank 6 liters of iced tea today. I had 3 whiskeys. Quite a few beers. I had 4 of the frappuccinos, a cup of coffee, 2.5 gallons of water. Plus whatever food I ate. Yeah, I mean, I've been like sitting here.
Is there any SEO topic you guys haven't covered or haven't gotten too in depth into that you think you should? I think.
Oh, what was it
something
we
that
missed?
might
Schema. No one's spoken about
Yeah.
schema today.
I have like no interest in schema because I just think I've heard it increases click-through rates, right?
Yeah,
Well,
it definitely increased click-through rates.
So I think it's an interesting debacle where we start to look at some of the stuff that we don't necessarily care from like a branding point of view, but when you look at like the job of a search engine to classify a bunch of data and the way that it needs to do that and making things easier, it's like a whole new thing that makes sense from a scientific standpoint. And it's like a scientist trying to come out and market. He invents this really cool new invention that's going to save the world, but he's a scientist and he gets all the technology behind it. But at the end of the day, he can't market it, and it makes no sense from a branding standpoint of view. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to market or brand without the invention, like Google, like the search engine. If that is that something that makes sense? The connection.
Yeah. I shouldn't say what I just said, that I have no interest, or back to driving impact is just, for me, it's a question, a matter of like, does it drive impact? Does it matter? And I think there's instances where it does. I think the click-through rates, I saw something from Ryan Dean where it's like, if there's like a 5-star review or whatever in the SERPs, people are going to click it.
Yeah.
Remember when they used to have like the author image like on Google Plus, like that would, so I think there's times where schema makes sense. I guess the reason I don't focus there is I get afraid of getting caught up in it. Or of course, if there were a project or a client that like really needed this. And then the other thing now too is like Google's just figuring, like, even when there's not schema, Google can, I forget how they phrase it, but like Google can like form it into structured data or parse it out. So it's like, this is a table and this, they'll pull it into the SERPs. Sorry, that's not really addressing what you just said, is it?
No, it is. Because I'm just having like a hard time like expanding.
It can be important, especially for communicating.
It's
like if you have data and information.
Yeah. Communicating would be good right now if Garrett and I could manage.
If your brain was fine.
I just like don't know how to like say it in a way that makes sense. It's like I can feel in the back of my head. It's like make it come out my mouth.
It's like optimization. It's like you're helping Google get your information and data, which is ultimately helping serve their users. And I think that's kind of what it's all about, right? Because at the end of the day, Google is a slave to helping users find what they're looking for and providing them that. And then SEOs are kind of, for lack of a better metaphor, a slave to Google who's doing that. So if we're like trying to help users find their information, then we're doing our job.
All right, yeah, like the whole reason Google got popular as a search engine was because they served better search results, and they continue to make an effort to do so. Otherwise, no one would use Google, and Google couldn't serve ads because no one was using Google, and then Google wouldn't make any money, and there's no Google, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which comes back to like user experience. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, no, go on. That's a fair point.
Yeah, no, it comes back to user experience and value, right? And I mean, I do remember using Alta Vista back when I was a
Oh,
teenager,
man.
but there were search engines that just weren't as good, and the simplicity too, right? Google having that one box. One thing, totally change of subject. Do you guys talk about or think about keyword grouping or keyword clustering and how to utilize that for optimizing a page for multiple keywords?
Yeah, so there were a couple good talks today. Like Nick Eubanks went into some really heavy theoretical stuff. That'd be good to check out once we send out like the whole show again.
Yeah, he was really good.
Vin talked about it. Who else talked about some keyword stuff?
Jared did as well.
Yeah. I'm too tired to reiterate them, but like
No.
they saw it was really cool, eye-opening stuff.
Yeah, no, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm just like talking.
I was going to say, I think it's a very underserved, kind of like underestimated area of SEO, right? So when people think of keyword research, they think of just getting a whole bunch of keywords, right? Google Keyword Planner, maybe it's through Ahrefs, maybe it's from other sources. And I think there's so many data sources you can pull keywords from. It's fascinating. I think there's maybe roughly a dozen places, right? So you can throw competitor URLs into Google Keyword Planner. You can throw it into Ahrefs. You can come up with your own ideas. You can mash up ideas of different terms and words. You can look at your AdWords data if you've ever run AdWords. You can look at your Google Search Console, Google Analytics data. And actually, I tend to trust this stuff much more because despite what Google Keyword Planner is telling you or Ahrefs is telling you, I believe, and I could be wrong, that your impression data from Google Search Console is going to be way more accurate because it's realistic. And it's been really interesting because with cryptocurrencies, you see these like ridiculous spikes over November, December 2017, so just like 2 months ago, and now everything is like collapsed in terms of the interest of cryptocurrencies, and I guess the prices have come down. But there's some keywords that on a regular average month, it's like how to buy Bitcoin is like a standard one. If you think more long tail, like how to buy Ripple, right? That one like was maybe like 100 searches a month or 200 searches a month a year ago, and then last month it was like, I don't know, tens of thousands of searches a month, something insane. So that impression data, I do trust a lot more, but it's hard to collect that and use that accurately, I think, in a systematic way because it does vary and it's hard to truly know what's the best source I find. But coming back to the point, what I find to be very valuable for clients and for optimizing and trying to rank aside from multiple keywords is doing a very exhaustive keyword collection process of collecting data from all these different places, putting that all into a spreadsheet, right? Trying to get that to maybe, well, again, if it's a local plumber, it's going to be much smaller, right? And maybe we'll just be looking local search volume within that city. If it's a national company or international, it's going to be a much bigger list of keywords, right? So there could be thousands. And then removing any duplicates from that list, pulling in the data, because some of those keyword ideas might come from Search Console, might come from Ahrefs. So basically, you take out negative keywords, you take out branded searches. Now you've got like this big list of keywords, right? But then what happens is it's not actionable. It's like, well, what do you do with that, right? And typically, the traditional classic way is like, oh, we're going to write this blog post and like optimize it to this one keyword. And you soon realize that one blog post or page can be ranking for dozens of keywords on its own, maybe more, because of all the long tail, and all the variations and synonyms and similar user intent, and Google might show that on page 2. So then you realize, okay, I could be optimizing this one page towards many, many keywords, right? So now you're starting to think about what are all the keywords that are relevant to this page. And so I find it valuable to look at that list of all the keywords you have, we'll call it 1,000, and to start really breaking it up into different groups. And I've actually been wanting to develop a SaaS on this, and I haven't, and I think it's kind of neglected and ignored. If you look at the search volume on Google Keyword Planner of like site auditing tool or SEO audit tool, it's pretty high. If you look at just the keyword volume for keyword clustering or keyword grouping, it's extremely low, and people aren't even searching for like a keyword clustering tool. And when I was searching for a keyword clustering tool, I was very disappointed. So I'm basically talking through my process of, all right, how are we going to plan out content? How are we going to optimize pages towards multiple keywords? And so that all starts with keyword collection, moves into keyword grouping, or clustering sounds like the more commonly used term.
Yeah, I forget what the tool, because Vin covered this quite a bit in his presentation, and there was a tool he used to do some of that stuff, but I forget the name now. I guess we'll have to rewatch Vin's presentation to
I'm going to also
yeah, we've had quite a bit on keywords today, and I think the theme's been pretty similar to what you're discussing there, of just about intelligent ways of grouping things, and looking at what you can rank for beyond the old-fashioned one keyword, bang it in 27 times to get you 3% that you hope that you rank. So it's interesting actually, because there's now it's come up 4 times, and everyone's approach is kind of converging on a similar theme of just doing it a little bit more intelligently. Nick's was the most mathematical of the approaches.
Yeah, I previewed his presentation, and then I was thinking, like, am I in the wrong room? Because I was like trying to understand some slides, and I was like, I think
I was in the wrong room, and I wasn't even tired yet. If he tried speaking now and I was listening, I'd be like, yeah, this is definitely going to have to be rewatched tomorrow morning. But no, he was really good. I mean, that's one that I think everyone, if you missed it, you should definitely rewatch, just because I don't think you're going to find many people prepared to talk about that stuff in that amount of detail. While we're talking about just the replays and everything else, if you make sure you're on the list at 24hoursofseo.com/register, you'll get all the individual videos. If you want to sit through the 24 hours on YouTube again, this will be staying up anyway, but we're going to edit and chop it up, send out the slides for the various presenters who sent them in and things like that. So it's worth getting on the list. Someone on Twitter's pointed out we're almost at $5,000. So if any of you really enjoyed Tom's presentation and would like to give a little bit and help us creep over the line, please do. If not, at least buy a mug. Come on, there's plenty of mugs left on Teespring. Grab some mugs. Help us. We've only got 3 hours to go in a few minutes.